I'm Don Soifer. This is Ashley Soifer. We are from the other Las Vegas, the one that didn't come first. And we are the National Microschooling Center. And we are totally thrilled to be here. I got to just say that I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Paul for a long time. We shared the same mentor back in when we were both working in Washington, D.C. in the great John Barrett. And when Paul came out here to launch this 17 years ago, John, you're up there somewhere, and your number one has done a fantastic job, and we are thrilled to be here. Thanks to Carrie Hunter and Stand Together and Ed Choice for living. So let's way of introduction. We are the National Microschooling Center. We are a nonprofit movement builder for microschooling around the country. Microschooling is so exciting in so many ways. It's, I would say, and now for something completely different. And microschooling gives you that, and it looks different in every state, in every community. It brings together an incredible coalition of left, right, and center of amazing educators. And we'll tell you what it is that we're seeing and how we're seeing it. But getting to what Leslie was talking about for in terms of educational freedom, microschooling really is 1 million to 2 million people, according to the researchers, who have just reclaimed control of their children's educational trajectories in meaningful ways that matter to them. And we are thrilled to support and work with so many different models, so many different diversified microschools and leaders and families in so many different ways. And we're just grateful for the opportunity to be part of one of the most exciting education narratives in 3 generations.
Perfect timing.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Ashley is my co-founder and our Chief Innovation Officer and can tell you about why we're here and what got us here.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, just a little bit of background on what the National Microschooling Center is and how we came to be. We were working in Nevada, nonprofit that Don started up, Nevada Action for School Options, really just focused on quality school options in Nevada. Pandemic happened. It was right before school was scheduled to start, August of 2020, that Don was in talking to city leadership for the city of North Las Vegas in Nevada, which is the poorest, hardest working, fastest growing city in Nevada. And they were talking about needing a solution for their residents. Their residents were needing to go back to work, and they were hearing stories of kids being left alone at home with a jar of peanut butter, being told, don't answer the door if somebody knocks, stay out of trouble. And education wasn't even a part of the conversation. They were asking, how do we get a good charter school in North Las Vegas, or how can we attract some more private schools to North Las Vegas? And we knew, with Don's background in educational research, that they needed to move a little quicker than either of those options. So we worked through the night, wrote up 2 briefing books on microschooling, dropped them off at the city manager's desk the next morning, and they contracted with our nonprofit. Our funders were nice enough to let us donate our time to the city of North Las Vegas. And we designed and operated in year 1 the first ever public-private partnership micro school. It was the Southern Nevada Urban Micro Academy. It took place in person during the pandemic in their rec centers and libraries in North Las Vegas. And we had a blast doing it. We worked with an incredible, diverse staff from all sorts of backgrounds. We love to talk about Mr. Levi, who was our star middle school math teacher, who's the head of pyrotechnics at the Knights of the Round Table show out on the Las Vegas Strip. And I mean, what middle school math kid didn't want to hear about how he used math every day to blow things up, right? We had a ton of success with the program. We were very excited. The kids that were with us for the full year averaged about 2 years growth in literacy and comparable in math. And it wasn't just all academics, right? It wasn't just about, oh, let's get those scores up, let's test the kids. It was really about knowing the kids, knowing that there was this little guy in 1st grade who only saw his dad 1 week out of the month. And when it was Dad's week and Dad got off work at 1 o'clock that afternoon, that little guy was going to come to us at about noon telling us he didn't feel good and he wanted to go home. And we knew we could adjust his schedule so that he was working on his academic portion of the day in the morning, so that when 12 o'clock hit and he started to say that his stomach hurt so he could go spend time with his dad, that we could let him go. And that's really what microschooling is about, is those relationships, knowing your families, knowing your kids, and tailoring a plan for each kiddo that's in your micro school. I'm gonna go back and, oh, perfect, thank you.
Well, let's start in. We're gonna give you a little bit of background and then talk about what it is that we're seeing now. And let's make this a conversation. So what's driving this exciting narrative in American education really is the people that are involved with it. I think there's nowhere better to tell the story than James Lomax, who was a naval aviator who flew Hornets for the Navy. And then when he had his own daughter and he came to Las Vegas, he decided he needed to create something better and founded an Acton Academy Microschool in Las Vegas. Beth is that life early on in the charter school movement that I had the good fortune to be part of. We had these life-changing educators who met together in church basements to come together and work together to build a community to solve problems and solutions. And Beth is one of those. When we first started doing this, about 7 in 10 microschool founders are currently or recently licensed public educators. Beth was one of those who said she just got tired of having to kick her classroom door closed so that she could teach the way that she knew her children needed to be taught. And she launched an amazing microschool, and she's working in the Seattle area. And Monica is the youth
pastor
at her independent Christian church, and runs a microschool. It serves over 100 kids. We do that too. So microschooling to us, so the National Microschooling Center supports microschools, and microschools are innovative small learning environments. As long as you're a multi-family learning environment, about the median age we find is about 12 kids. And as long as and many of them are permissionless and outside of the system, we're happy to help and support. But to me, and to us, I think what's most exciting about microschooling is not just the recreating of school at your home, but microschooling leaders everywhere are doing things that are just not possible in the frameworks in the states in which they're operating. The state that we live in has some of the most, with apologies to maybe New York and Maryland, over-regulated private schools in America. And you couldn't possibly pull off a truly child-centered learning environment. Let alone you're not even looking for any taxpayer dollars to do it. Microschooling leaders are making things possible that just wouldn't be possible any other way.
So at the National Microschooling Center, we are really about movement building, and we're about protecting the microschooling founders and this microschooling movement so that it doesn't get stuck in some sort of constraint that it doesn't belong in. We're really about helping founders to access tools and resources to be able to create innovative learning environments that work, again, for their families, for their kids, right? It's not about taking a school and recreating it just on a small scale. It's about building something new. And so we're here to help support those founders and families however we can. We also really do a lot of ecosystem building work. We love going into new communities and meeting the amazing leaders on the ground and helping them, giving them the support to grow a microschooling ecosystem in their community. One of the biggest areas that our microschool founders have found, one of the biggest keys to success and sustainability, is having that ecosystem of microschools in their community. Again, something you'll hear me say a lot, but it's about what works for each kid. And so it's incredibly beneficial to microschool founders if there's a kiddo that's not thriving in their program to be able to sit down with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever the family member is, that's in charge of this child's education, and talk through different options and say, hey, we are not seeing your child thrive here, but did you meet Felicia that's just down the street because she's running an amazing project-based microschool? Or have you met Sarah and Yamila and their self-directed learning environment? Let's go around and meet these microschool founders, and they really do support each other and share families. And so we love to help support ecosystems of microschools and create that growth and foster those amazing relationships so that microschooling can truly thrive in communities. Sure. At the National Microschooling Center, we really see 3 different tracks of microschools. We see independent microschools, which are what most people think of when they first hear the word microschool, and those are former educators, parents, people making a mid-shift in their career that are opening up an independent microschool, whether it's in their home or it's in a storefront. They're creating the model, they're designing their program and doing it on their own. And again, that's what most people think of first when they hear microschools. The second track that we see is partnership microschools, which is what we did with the city of North Las Vegas for the Southern Nevada Urban Micro Academy. And that can be done with municipalities like North Las Vegas. It can be done with employers. We're hearing from a lot of employers right now that it's a difficult time to recruit and retain employees, and creating a micro school to be an addition to their benefits package is really appealing to a lot of employers. It can be done with trade associations. We're also working with a library that's developing a micro school for the residents in their county. So there's lots of ways that that partnership model can work, and really there's a host partner that will provide some resources, a space, if they have any technology or an IT department, what resources they have that they can provide, and then a technical partner that will come in and oversee the day-to-day teaching and learning and have those relationships with the families. And then the final track of microschooling that we see is the provider network microschools like the Prendas, Actons, KaiPods. Those can be a really great solution for somebody that wants to start a microschool but isn't quite ready to step out and do it on their own. So those networks come with a lot of supports and tools and resources.
So let's talk a little bit about what's out there. So the most common arrangement for microschool to be housed is in a commercial space, and usually that's more than anything else, that's storefront space. I mean, in the early days of charter schools, right? Charter schools were the incredible, innovative ways of using an old rope factory in Worcester, Massachusetts. Microschools are doing really incredible things with the space that they have. Houses of worship, so many churches that don't have the ability to run a traditional private school, but have 2 or 3 classroom spaces, so houses of worship, whether or not the microschool is affiliated with the ministry or not. It's a terrific way for houses of worship to serve their communities and their missions. Private homes, we see in some places, Maricopa County, Arizona, private homes that are currently residences, and then sort of other, and the most common other is private homes that are not currently residences. Again, I talked about the incredibly diversified backgrounds of microschooling founders and leaders. And the other thing that really is striking about the diversification of the sector, I mean, the missions and the ways that the microschools are organized and what their priorities are really matter. It broke my heart when I was a charter authorizer in Washington, D.C., when we had to accept the closure of a small neighborhood Afrocentric school because the system was just incapable of measuring the effectiveness of a model that's so radically different than the cookie-cutter charter school replications that the corporate philanthropy world was handing us. And microschools can be incredibly diversified. And the other thing is their schedule. So that so many microschools can be organized as a private school, accredited or unaccredited, or as a learning center that serves kids under the homeschool framework. But they're also flexible in terms of schedule. We're working with a group that is the tech workers for Cirque du Soleil shows who work at night and just want to see their kids more, so they want to have a non-traditional schedule. And a microschool, you can do that, which is part of what's so exciting about it. Next slide.
Thank you.
Okay, so we talk about microschools and founders as entrepreneurs, and that's great, right? Because they truly are social entrepreneurs who are not waiting for government to create solutions to their educational needs. That said, it's an amazing group, and this is a slide that we did from a sector analysis that we published earlier this year. The main motivations of microschooling founders, when we studied them, the top 2 are fascinating. Number 1 is to provide educational opportunities for kids that were not thriving in traditionally from historically marginalized or underserved communities. And then number 2, very similarly, just to help kids who weren't thriving in their prior setting. And thriving is such a crucial word in microschooling. Dr. Michelle Borba's book, really, if you haven't had the opportunity, that's what this is about. And it's thriving for both the educators and for the families.
Sorry, I had to trade you spots. You keep wandering out of frame, so I figure I'll kind of push you this way.
Yeah. Next slide, please.
All right, so one of my very favorite things to talk about are how microschools are showing impact. And I think this is something we're at a really crucial moment right now in the microschooling movement, and this conversation should be heard far and wide. Microschools can measure their impact in such a variety of ways. And some of the microschools that we work with have rejected state academic content standards. And the reason why they've rejected those state academic content standards is because they're hearing from families that they do not believe that those state academic content standards are what's needed to prepare their children for the future ahead of them. That those state academic content standards were designed to prepare the parents for the future that they had, and we know that that's a future that doesn't exist anymore for the children that are currently in school. So some microschools measure academics through things like learning platforms, the dashboards that are available that do mastery assessments and are adaptive. Some microschools measure things like how many times a child participates in a discussion at the beginning of the year versus how many times they participate 3 months in. Microschools measure things like satisfaction, both child satisfaction and parent satisfaction in surveys. They measure things like collaboration. They measure things like critical thinking. Our microschool founders are great at getting out into their communities and talking to employers. What are the skills that you need? what are the skills that you're not seeing in your current applicants, and helping to grow and foster those skills in the kiddos that they're working with. So I think it's so crucial right now to not try to create some sort of form of measurement that's a blanket measurement that encompasses all microschools, but to allow microschools to really, truly measure their impact based on why families are choosing them.
Next slide, please. So what comes with that and into the world of public policy is that, again, microschooling is growing in states that are fortunate to have the universal ESA and the ESA program, right? Because it really does allow the sort of learn everywhere unbundling of schooling that you can do with microschooling. That said, the National Microschooling Center loves our microschools in blue states as much as we love our microschools in red states. And we love our microschools in red states that are just not interested in taking taxpayer dollars because they don't want to run the risk of compromising the very flexibilities that are so crucial to what they do, that are the reason that their parents choose them. So in terms of public policy, there's two sides of this. For those of us that are active with stewarding the taxpayer dollars to ensure that taxpayer school choice dollars are not policymakers, we've done a lot of work in like West Virginia that had the first of this generation of ESA laws, working to ensure that there are no bad faith operators in the space, but doing so in a way that doesn't, the regulatory apparatus where microschools work didn't anticipate microschooling. Like Ashley said, microschooling is not necessarily brand new. The 1873 model of microschool is incredibly popular in this country, just maybe updated with some things about pedagogy and technology that we didn't know then, although not always using technology. So the things that we talked about, that are those very flexibilities, we just need to make sure from a public policy point of view that we don't compromise so that we then restrict the ability of microschools to offer the flexibilities that makes them so popular with their families.
And that really goes back a little bit to kind of what we were talking about earlier before we started. We were asked what the definition of a microschool is. And that's a question that we get asked a lot, and it makes sense, right? Everybody wants to know, well, what exactly is a microschool? But as we're talking about these, protecting these amazing, innovative learning environments, part of it is that we don't establish a strict definition. We don't want to box anybody in. We want to make sure that the space remains open for microschool founders to be creative and innovative. And so we work really hard to help policymakers avoid that urge to create that strict definition.
Next slide, please. Let's talk for a second about New Mexico. And you know this far better than we do, but let's just say, so we did a fantastic 3-week, 7-state microschool movement building tour over the summer that started in Jackson, Mississippi. And there's a presentation about Mississippi later this afternoon. In terms of the flexibilities that your state allows for both homeschooling and for private schools, whether they're going to be accredited or unaccredited. We can talk about that in the question and answer if you'd like to get a sense of what that means. Those are the ways that you can do things here in this state. The homeschooling requirements give you a lot to work with too. One of the beauties of microschooling in so many ways is that families are just much more active partners in their children's education than our educators are used to seeing in their traditional schooling settings. For the most part, in their public schools, right? If you've got a public school, middle school classroom like where we live, where you've got 36 kids and 33 chairs, right? Parents can be much more actively involved, and they are in so many ways.
I think something that's really exciting about that too is we hear from parents that will tell us, I've never been invited into a discussion about my child's academics before. I've never been told, here's where your child is at. What kind of goals do you and the child want to set for the end of the year? And here's how we make that plan together. So really establishing that team of family and educator and child, that they're all there for the child's success, is so crucial to microschooling.
And if you want to talk about New Mexico specific stuff, we can do that. Next slide, please.
So at the National Microschooling Center, we offer a variety of movement building supports. We talked a little bit about that earlier. They come in a variety of different forms. We hold free trainings. I always kind of jokingly say that our most popular training is also our least fun. Operational necessities is the one that gets requested the most. But we have other trainings set up around things like smart growth and establishing a good culture and tracking progress and showing impact. We also, though, do a lot of one-on-one conversations with microschools, everything from, hey, I've got this idea and I don't quite know how to open my doors, and we work with them from this amazing idea to getting doors opened, to somebody that's maybe been doing this for 10 years and reaches out and says, oh my gosh, I've been on an island. I'm so glad to be able to connect and have a community of microschool founders to be a part of. We also have heard from microschool founders that it's really difficult for microschools to get access to learning tools like Lexia, ST Math, iExcel, iReady, because these learning tool providers are used to working with large school districts, and so they require a bulk license purchase. And that is too costly and has way too many licenses for our microschools to use. So the National Microschooling Center, we've been able to work with these learning tool providers and handle contract management, where we can go in and buy the bulk set of licenses and then allow microschool founders to take what they need at cost, whether they need 5 Lexia licenses or 150 Lexia licenses. We can help them navigate that. And we also provide professional development for the platform so that they can know how to access the data and read the data and interpret it. And we do awesome, fun meetings, whether we're traveling around and we're in person, which, by the way, this is my first time in New Mexico, and I have to tell you guys, getting on the plane, somebody told me when she found out it was my first time here, she's like, oh, the friendliest people you'll ever meet are in Albuquerque, and she was so right. I have absolutely loved coming here, so I'm really excited and hope we get to come back again soon. So we'll hold in-person meetings, everything from a convening with microschool founders to talk about what they're going through and what they need, and then open it up. Maybe we do that for an hour, and then we open it up to the general public for people that are interested in learning more about microschooling to come in and be a part of that. And we also do virtual meetings for our microschool founders, where we get together once a month to just be able to talk, right? Hey, I'm experiencing this problem. We've got an amazing microschool in Florida that's struggling to open her doors right now because of a new bathroom law there. So she's able to connect with other microschool founders to see different ideas and solutions that they might have. And then we also are super fortunate to have Daniel Sir on our team. He's our senior fellow for legal affairs, and he is available to work with any of our National Microschooling Center members pro bono if they experience regulatory pushback or harassment. And there have been plenty of times where there's been a cease and desist letter or a knock on the door from an overzealous regulator, and Daniel's been able to step in and help take care of that.
Next slide, and we're good. So let's turn this into a conversation. We'd love to talk about what's on your mind. We've got some particular things that we've been thinking about, but let's talk microschooling and however we can help. We're early on in the movement building here in New Mexico, and we'd love to be the beginning of a good long process. Yeah.
Are we going to mess you up if we grab chairs and sit down? I feel so like, is that okay? Okay, I'm going to grab some chairs so we can sit down and turn this into a conversation with everybody.
And you know, it'd be helpful for us to introduce yourself real quick so we have a sense of how we can use it.
Okay.
So my name is Karen Baldwin. I'm the Coalitions Director for Americans for Prosperity in New Mexico, but I'm also a homeschooling mom.
Awesome.
And 2 of my 3 kids actually just started Acton Academy.
Oh.
But my oldest really has got me thinking about the possibilities around microschooling, because he's the kind of boy that would have done really well in an apprenticeship style program.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you guys have microschools that have adopted an apprenticeship style learning environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that works really well in a variety of different ways. We've talked to different contractor associations before that have shown interest in creating a micro school where they are, doing that apprenticeship with the trades. We've got an amazing micro school that we work with that offers apprenticeships in the arts and the performing arts, connecting kids in her micro school to artists in the community and doing mentorships and apprenticeships. I think that's one of the most exciting developments in microschooling, especially in those high school and even middle school years, where a child really can get a chance to experience a career and find out what they do like and what they don't like before, if it's a career that requires a college degree, before they put in 2 or 3 years into tuition and time and then realize, oh, this isn't for me. But yeah, apprenticeships are definitely popular in the microschooling world.
And are those things that has typically just been in like a high school level? Because the reason why I ask this is because with my son in particular, like his interest was cars.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we did history, it was on the history of cars, or the science, it was about, the mechanics of the car, that sort of thing. But it was always cars focused. And now what he's doing is he has a paid, essentially an apprenticeship, but he's old enough to work at an auto body shop where he's learning a lot more. But it's all geared towards that one thing that he's interested in, and it started a long time ago. But it would have been great to actually get him like on the car way, way before.
Right.
So that's sort of what, are you guys talking about just high school level, or, can you do that earlier?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly nothing that says you can't do it earlier. I think there's just a few more barriers that come in that you have to find a way to get through, right? So transportation oftentimes is something that can be a barrier for kiddos that aren't old enough to drive themselves to and from the apprenticeship. And especially in, I'm not sure what public transportation is like here. I know in Las Vegas, we don't have great public transportation. Oh, yeah, right? So when you're dealing with barriers like that can make it a little more difficult. And then just thinking through, the commitment on the employer side that will be offering the apprenticeship and how comfortable they are with having younger kids on their site. A lot of times, though, we'll see micro schools bring in folks from different fields to do maybe a 6-week course at their micro school, right? So, for example, there was a micro school that we worked with. It was a self-directed learning center, and one of their kiddos was really interested in architecture, and so they brought in an architect, and he came in and talked about the firm and what styles of math that they would need to use. And eventually it did end up with one of their kiddos going there for a day visit. But that was elementary age, and they weren't quite comfortable having a group of elementary kids hanging out at the firm all day. Yeah.
Shane, if you lived in Los Angeles, you could visit El Mercito Academy, which is for younger kids, but it's actually a microschool on the converted machinist floor of a race car shop.
It's amazing.
In a warehouse in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome environment.
And they go out to the racetrack pretty often to learn about velocity and all sorts of, amazing lessons that can be added there. And actually, Lizette, who runs El Mercito in Los Angeles, has an RV that she was able to repurpose as a classroom. So she takes the kids on the road as often as she can as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry I came late, but so microschools is appropriate and exists for kids all ages.
That's right.
Yes.
It tends to, since pandemic, right, it tended to trend young for obvious reasons. And high school microschooling is a little bit more complicated, sometimes more expensive because you need to have, the general feeling is you want to have more adults who can teach some of the more, intricate learning areas. But we're really making progress solving high school microschooling, and we've got some really great examples around the country to draw from.
Yeah. Our oldest.
What's the biggest?
Okay, so again, we fiercely resist too much statutory definition on microschooling. Like, I was in the group that had to define blended learning in federal law, which was a requirement because it had to be an allowable use of funds. But the minute you get lawmakers to debate about definitions, and then we've got such a fast-moving and innovative community, we don't want to lock it into too much of a definition. But we have plenty of microschools that serve more than 100 kids, whether they're multi-campus microschools, maybe they're different kids that rotate in every day. Hybrid microschools don't serve the same kids every day. So you absolutely can do that, and it's, Acton Academy is a place that does it very well. Yeah.
Good morning. You all talked about accreditation, and although that is not a requirement here in New Mexico, it certainly opens up opportunities for potential funding. Obviously, working in an unconventional education environment, as we begin the process of starting to look into accreditation, it's incredibly difficult.
Absolutely.
So my question is, has your organization or perhaps another organization thought about coming up with some sort of accredited endorsement for schools like us that may not fall into the conventional requirements by many of the national accreditation organizations?
We are actively working on it.
We
are partnering with the Institute for Self-Directed Learning in Atlanta. And because we have microschools that could absolutely be accredited tomorrow, many of them are. For any of you that have been part of an accreditation process, some of them, the number of people that have been through that expensive and cumbersome process that would say it actually made life within their school building better on a day-to-day basis are not so many people. That said, what's an accreditation process that could be relevant? We sort of think of it more as a medallion process. Could be relevant and useful to microschools. A lot of the time, the target audience is families, right? Parents. We work with so many kids that are in a dual custody situation where one parent needs to explain to the other the value of this thing that they're in because it is non-traditional. So we are actively going through a process of studying what a process can be or needs to be or doesn't need to be, because for microschools that are required, even in Texas, there's a child-centered agency that does some accreditation for microschools. But if you require a microschool to have audited financial statements every year, which can cost, $15,000 easily,
Yeah.
most microschools aren't actually set up as IRS 501c3 nonprofits. So for them to have to pay that $15,000 annual expense when you're only serving 7 kids. So we're working on having a process, a medallion process that's useful. And also in some states that are school choice states, like Iowa, everyone loves the Iowa ESA program, but it only allows for participation for accredited schools. So that's a public policy challenge that we're working on too. But yeah, it's in the pipeline.
And we're definitely talking with different microschool founders about what they see would be valuable in an accreditation process. So we'd love to have you as part of the conversation. Feel free to make sure that we exchange info. I think that you've talked to Don before, but we'll make sure that if you're interested in being a part of the conversation, we'd love to have you and hear your thoughts on
We're
it.
convening focus groups in about a month. We'd love to talk to you.
Excellent.
Cool. Yeah.
I heard you mention Institute of Self-Directed Learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's run by the amazing Dr. Thigpen in Atlanta. He
Tyler Thigpen?
Yeah, Dr. Tyler Thigpen, based out of Atlanta, Georgia. He is the founder of an Acton Academy called the Forest School in Atlanta. And he now runs the Institute for Self-Directed Learning, and it's really about helping folks that want to learn how to apply self-directed learning principles and ideas to their models. And so he's working with educators that are interested in going a little further with self-directed learning.
We have a friend at Stand Together who likes to say, who wouldn't want to send their kid to the forest school? And I have to say, buddy, we live in a desert. Yeah.
I know absolutely nothing about microschools. Where is the funding? Like, how does the funding work?
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
85 to 90% of microschools in the country really just rely on what they call tuition-based, right? There's no taxpayer dollars. We are big, so to do this right, and because of that, you've got to be creative on both sides of the financial ledger, which means be creative on ways you can get revenue sources and be creative on ways that you can keep costs down. And we advise people every day on different ways to do that. Some of the ways that you can, we work with North Las Vegas, the classic construct of a municipal government within a large county that's always been the redheaded stepchild whose families are disabused by the leadership of the 5th largest school district in the country and don't have very many options. So they were willing to put city appropriated dollars that are totally outside of the education funding stream, which is pretty advantageous if you're running a school and don't need to have those strings attached, which was a great way to do things. We have lots of creative ways to do it, partnership microschools. So we're working with say it's a family-friendly employer that wants to give their families a schooling opportunity that meets their needs, doesn't cost them productive time, right? Large school districts are notorious for not making life very convenient for families to come in and be an active part of their kids' learning. So sometimes we can get resources from those. We do have, in like Northern California, we have, some people, the alt school approach to microschooling tends to be, like $30,000 a year, and for families that can afford that, they still need a better place to send their kid to. But as the movement grows and becomes more equitable and more diversified, we're able to find more and more creative sources of revenue to make that work.
And I think some of it too goes back to, like we kind of talked a little bit about the 3 tracks of microschooling, and Don was mentioning some of the ways that partnership microschooling can make it more affordable and bring in some outside funding. For our independent microschool founders, there are some amazing people doing really creative, creating really amazing solutions that will allow them to take, for example, I'll share one of them with you. So we've got an awesome microschool founder, Amy, who serves a neurodivergent population. Her kids come with a variety of different diversities, whether it's ADD or on the autism spectrum, or she's really strong in the neurodivergent community. She found space available in a medical complex that was up for rent. She rented that space, but she had office spaces that she didn't need, and so she now has speech therapists and occupational therapists and other forms of therapists renting those spaces at a low cost from her. So that's helping her cover her rent, but then because they're renting low cost, they come in and provide services to her children in exchange for some of that low cost rent. So she's able to bring in more opportunities for her kids. And then they also, because those offices, they use them to serve their private clients, those clients come in and they're like, oh wait, hang on, this is a school? I could send my kids here? And so it's really been mutually beneficial for both Amy and for her parent or her therapists that are renting that space from her. And then we've had great success with Microschool founders reaching out to owners of dance studios that maybe only have their dance studio open in the afternoon for classes. And they're usually pretty happy to, at a low cost, rent that space during the day when it's not being used. And again, you've got that same setup where, oh, there are kids coming during the day and they see that it's this awesome dance studio, so maybe they want to stay and take those classes, and that benefits the studio owner. But then on the reverse, you've got the kids coming in the afternoon to take those dance classes, and they're hearing, oh, there are educational classes here during the day too. Hang on, let me learn more about it. So really, we always ask Microschool founders to go out and be active in their community and talk about what they want to do, because it's amazing the people that want to get involved once they know what your plan is.
And philanthropy is getting more and more comfortable with the microschooling concept. So, the Chattanooga Community Foundation, just a regular community foundation, is directly supporting microschools there, which is terrific. So we spend a fair bit of time educating philanthropy about what microschools' impact can look like and how you can be comfortable with that.
And Daniels through Vela has supported microschools in this area.
That's
So
right.
yeah, there's the Vela Education Fund does micro grants for microschools that need help with some of those low cost items and opening doors. Yeah, it's the Vela Education Fund. There's also, a few different organizations, like Dawn said, some of the philanthropy is getting more comfortable. Feel free we'll make sure you guys have our info. Feel free to send us an email. We'll make sure you get our newsletter. We always, whenever we hear of a new funding opportunity, we like to throw it in our newsletter and keep people updated with what's out there.
Peter Droege from the Daniels Fund is here at the conference, and I'm totally happy to introduce you.
Yeah.
Let me try something real quick.
Yeah.
The audio's having trouble picking up the questions,
Oh,
so
Cool.
I'm going to
And or
try.
we can repeat them.
That would be great. But
Okay.
we're gonna try this first.
perfect.
And then
Thank you.
We've got some time, yeah.
Let's say this is different than a camp. Let's say you're doing a camp for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How, and people are paying for the camp. How would this differ from something like a camp or a series of camps?
Yeah.
Sure. And there are lots of different. Sure. Yeah. No, there are lots of different kinds of camps, right? Absolutely. And on the other, on the other side, right? Homeschoolers have been getting together on Thursday afternoons to roller skate, or Wednesday mornings for Bible study forever as well. So how is this different? And we talked a lot about sort of pods and so microschools. And I don't want to say curriculum, because we have child-centered microschools that fiercely resist the notion that they use a curriculum at all, right? And we're there for those as well. But microschooling is and microschool models, right? The Pod learning centers in New Hampshire, in Vermont, and New Hampshire,
New Hampshire and
now in
Arizona.
Arizona, don't. They let a family choose the curricular content that they're going to do, and come in, and this child wants to learn on Lexia, and this child wants to learn on Dreambox or IXL, and they can come in and do that, and they're having a go at making that work and supporting those kids in a meaningful way. So they can look for it. So the answer to your question is different depending on the particular model. And again, not all of them are even full-time. The hybrid approach works very well, especially because parents, under the homeschool frameworks in their state, can share the lift for the education of their children, and share that with the microschool in different ways.
And I think even though there's that team approach and the sharing, I would say one of the key differences between what you were describing and a multi-week camp, even if it's a series of camps, and a microschool, is that though there is that team and the parents are active in their child's education, they're really looking to the microschool for their core content provider. For their the microschool is the core source of their education.
Yeah.
Or primary, I guess I should say, not core, but the primary source of their educating comes from the microschool.
Let me just jump in. So, Karen, can I call you out for a second? We have the great fortune of having Dr. Karen Barras from the National Catholic Education Association. Catholic microschooling is one of the really important directions for this trend, and it looks really different in lots of different places, but it's making possible things that, and ways for dioceses to serve their families in ways that they just wouldn't otherwise be able to, in lots of different ways. And so thank you you've been leading in this area for some time, and not just in this role. But wonder what you're seeing and hearing, and what excites you or what worries you about it.
Well, first of all, on a personal basis, I just really respect the two of you, because they have been committed
into this for a very long time. They are tenacious, and they do a lot of research, and they are knowledgeable. So thank you. I have seen them grow a lot, even though it's microschools, they have grown. So good job.
Thank you.
As far as microschools in the Catholic field, again, it's a wonderful opportunity for schools to meet the needs of the people whom we serve and do so within the parameters of that. And also, someone brought up a question about accreditation, and CAPE and NCEA recently completed a national survey, and we had representative responses from 45 states regarding accreditation. And I don't believe that that information is public yet. I don't think that CAPE has disseminated it, but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating data.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How does somebody find a microschool that aligns with their values?
Yeah. So there are some places like Florida where it's absolutely okay to publish a map and parents can find a directory. There's a great group called Microschool Florida that's doing an awesome directory for parents. And then there are other states like Nevada where if a map was published, there would be knocks on the door and cease and desist letters coming daily. You'll find in Nevada when you drive by, you often don't know you're driving by a micro school. They don't have signs out there. They're pretty under the radar. So we have a team member that works with parents. If you're interested in finding a micro school in your area, feel free to reach out. We'll connect you with our team. And she's really great at talking with parents. Where do you live? How far are you able to travel for a micro school? What are the ages of the children? Do you want them all in the same micro school? Or are you looking for different micro schools? And where? What are you interested in? Are you looking for something that's project-based? Are you looking for faith-based? Or what sounds good to you? And also, like, what should we know about your kids and their learning style and what they prefer? And then we'll look in the area surrounding where you're at, see what's available, connect you with those microschool founders. And if there's nothing available in your area, but we've heard from other families in your area that are looking for something, we'll oftentimes reach out to those families and say, hey, there's a group of 10 of you, all within driving distance, that are really interested in microschooling, and we don't have a microschool in your area yet. Do you guys want to meet? And we'll do a meeting together with families, and often from there, a microschool, they'll come up with a plan. Oh, hey, I know this space. Oh, I know this person. And that can be the way to get a microschool started if there's not one available in your area currently.
Just real quick, because we have a few minutes, let me tell you a little bit about how we can be helpful. So microschoolingcenter.org, or just Google the National Microschooling Center. What you'll find and what you won't find. What you won't find is a map of all the microschools in the country. We have one. We have one internally. We're constantly updating it. But regulatory harassment is real. We experienced that in the early days of the charter school movement. And the last thing we want is to sick a overzealous regulator who wakes up on the wrong side of the bed and have them park in your driveway and across the street with a clipboard and count noses of kids that come in and go to your HOA or what you have, whatever you have. So we will not do that. But so often we are getting lots of calls every day now, and we often have to say, you can do this. This is something that you're going to need to build in your community. And there are not many places in the country yet that we have such a vibrant ecosystem that we can tell you that here's where the constellation of microschools in your area is. We adopt a movement building approach. So in the course of doing that, the National Microschooling Center has a bunch of tools. They're free. We don't charge. We're foundation backed. So we have a roadmap to independent microschools, or a roadmap to partnership microschools. Ashley mentioned that we won a great national grant sort of unexpectedly last year. We used it to buy learning tools so that we can give learning tools to microschools that they would never have access to, and we're constantly adding new to that. And we also do platform-specific trainings on that as well. Whatever the aspect, understanding the legislative and regulatory framework within your state, here's what you can do, here's what you want to be careful about doing. We sort of encourage people to do things like be a little bit under the radar until you're ready for that. Maybe it makes sense to not advertise as a school, because in some states, when you're a school, that brings a whole different level of regulation down on you. But we're there to help every step of the way, and we do every step of the way.
I think we have time for one more question.
I'm just wondering, since you have this information, but you keep it, internal,
Yeah.
what sort of interest have you found in New Mexico for microschools?
Yeah. So because of we have some affiliation with the Daniels Fund that's run the VELA local grant program, you've got a few that are here at this conference that we've not had the chance to visit yet, that we love, and Acton's been a great partner to us along the way in lots of places. Interest, yeah. Understanding how to do this in the framework. I mean, New Mexico is sort of early on in the process, and what we really hope in coming here, and working with Paul and Rio Grande, who I've had the good fortune of knowing for a long time, we can be back, and we can really help with. We do day-long workshops at every step of the process, and we love to bring people together and get some more things going, especially in communities that feel like the options that they have could be better for their own kids.
Yeah. So if any of you are interested in starting a micro school or are running a micro school and would like to try to help bring together the community in New Mexico, definitely reach out. That's one of my favorite things to do. I love getting to meet new micro school founders. As a former micro school founder with the project we did with the city of North Las Vegas, and as a micro schooling parent, it's meeting with folks like you all every day that really makes me love what I do. We have 3 children in micro schools, and we can say from firsthand experience that we know not only is microschooling life-changing for these kids, but in some cases it's also life-saving. So it's important work, and we are grateful for the amazing both educators and non-educators that are saying, I see a problem and I'm not waiting for permission, I'm creating a solution. So if you would like to be a part of that, we would love to have you.
We're not going to kick anybody out if you want to keep asking us questions.
Yeah,
however we
we're
can be
happy
helpful.
to.
But if you want to get a cup of coffee, we've got a little while for the next section. But
Yeah.
So thanks for listening to us, and we'd love to be in. And if you've got people around you that might have an interest in this, we get that call all the time. We have a member of our team that is the director of Microschool Leader Supports. Would love to take that call and start a dialogue and start figuring out how we can help build, and also how Microschool founders can get together and be a force that's greater than the sum of the parts, and really help raise awareness in families about what's possible, because what's possible is pretty inspiring.
We have cards if you'd like a card, but as Dawn said, we're also microschoolingcenter.org, Dawn at microschoolingcenter.org, Ashley at microschoolingcenter.org. Feel free to reach out anytime.